Okay, and well, yesterday I filmed a short video on how to make the dough and on how to cut it using a KitchenAid noodle maker. Now, Mary said that you would like me to show you how to do it on a hand crank. Well, we couldn't find it, or I couldn't find it yesterday, and today we found it, so I'm going to show you. So I made a very small batch of dough. I let it sit for a couple hours, so here it is. As you can see, it's tacky, which is the way you want it, not too dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off a small piece, put the rest of it back in the refrigerator, as we did yesterday, and we're going to start rolling it out and cutting it. And like I say, I recommend a piece about this size, just because it's going to be easier to put through the hand crank. If you get a piece that's too big, then you end up cutting it several times, and it just works out better if you use a smaller piece, in my opinion. Once again, I use my fingers to do this. You could do this. The problem with doing this, Ann, I find, is that you can't tell where the wet spots are on them, and so it's just a matter of feel. I just don't like using a rolling pin, but you can certainly use one if you're comfortable with that or you like it better. Okay, once it gets to, I don't know, any kind of a thickness like that, what we're going to do, you can see there's a lot of flour on there, so now it's not tacky at all. So we're going to slide over now to the hand crank machine. I'll try to do this slowly so nobody gets sick. Okay, now as you can see, I've already made some dough. I've already made some noodles, and I did that earlier, and then I dropped the camera, so I felt like an idiot, so I started over again. So the first thing you want to do, if you want to put a little bit of flour on here. Now, you want to set this on number 1. It's on 1 right now. As you can see, I cut the dough into a smaller piece like that because it's going to get pretty big. So you've got it on 1. You take your hand crank, obviously. You put it in the very first one. And you spin it a few times, get the hang of it. And then you just put that in there. And I try to run it through twice at each stage. Now, we're going to move it to number 2. And depending on how the dough feels, you can skip some of these numbers. But as a general rule, I might try to use each of them. If the dough hasn't sat long enough, sometimes it'll stretch and it'll tear. So we're on number 3. So I don't know, and really, which is faster, doing it this way or the electric one. The electric one is, if you make a mistake, you can't stop. It has to cycle all the way through. So if the dough starts to tear, it folds on itself. Here I can stop and back it out again. So now we've moved it to 4. And this is the same number symbol, or the same numbers as the KitchenAid. Now 4 is pretty thin, you can see. It's not thick at all. It's pretty thin. Now I'm just going to go to 5, which is this one. And once in a while, you may have to put some flour on here. Like I'm going to put a little bit of flour on it before I run it through the cutter, just to make sure that it goes through smoothly. Okay, so there we go. This is going to be our final number, and it's going to feel really thin. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, that's going to tear. But if the dough sits long enough, it can handle pretty much anything you throw at it. Okay, so you can see, you can see my fingers through it. And it's very delicate. Well, I shouldn't say it's delicate. It's just, it feels delicate, but it really isn't. So now what I'm going to do is take just a smidgen of flour and put it on there. And maybe a smidgen and put it on the other side, just so that it goes through the hand crank a little bit easier. Now, of course, I've taken my hand crank out of this one. I put it into here. Now I'm going to switch hands, and I'm going to start over here. Because you're going to want to grab the noodles and sort of pull them, like wiggle your fingers like that to keep them going. Because if you don't do that, they're going to end up in a pile down here, and you don't want to do that. That's just a pain. So here's what we're going to do. Put those in like that. Then as soon as this starts going, you see it starts fading in, we're going to put that down, put our hand under there, and just sort of feed them through with our hand, wiggle our fingers so that we get a handful of noodles like that. Now comes the fun part. I'm going to go to the other side of the table where I now separate them all and lay them just so that they're not touching each other lengthwise. And then, that's how you use the hand crank.